Thank you, good afternoon. My name is Hemingway. I'm your district superintendent, so I lead policing activities in Trafford. I've been here for about a year now, and when I came here last year from South Manchester, and I've worked in Withenshaw for many years, it startled me about the level of violence and the burglaries that are occurring here. So I just wanted to start by saying, when I started here, and this will continue, that burglary, residential, invasive, violent domestic burglary, is our #1 priority in Trafford. It's mentioned at every meeting, every briefing our staff have, it goes on the briefing, so all the staff in Trafford know how important the response to burglary is. When I first came here, whilst I only have a finite number of resources in Trafford, and at the last community meeting I came to a couple of weeks ago, I asked the audience for an idea of what level of resource we have. And per shift, so on mornings, afternoons or late, I have between about 12 and 15 officers patrolling the whole of Trafford. So I want to give you some context to that, and actually Sir Graham, I can echo Sir Graham's sentiments. I'd actually written a few notes down to prompt me, ring us so we can evidence the need, and that is absolutely right. That's so critical that you do that. So critical that you share any information and intelligence with us so that we can do something about it, but critical that you do ring 101 or 999 if it's an emergency, so that we can capture the need in this part of South Manchester and into Trafford. So please continue. That's my pledge really to everybody here. I'm fiercely proud of what we achieve with the limited numbers we've got, and ultimately it's for me to decide how we distribute those resources. So on a typical night, you will have a couple of officers sat with a patient who's mentally unwell on a section 136. That can take 2, sometimes 3 officers. So you take that out of the equation. We may then have missing vulnerable children who are at risk of criminal or sexual exploitation. Those missing inquiries are extremely laborious, time-consuming, but absolutely necessary. So you take a couple of officers out of that equation. You then look at the kind of incidents that are coming in, extreme domestic violence, people that are feeling fear from people that they know, rapes, robbery. So it's a real complex picture of demand for those 12 to 15 officers. And we do have to prioritise. Now, calls will be prioritised as to the levels of violence. And absolutely, that's why I think that our response needs to be different to domestic burglary. What I've commissioned is, when I first started, I have the ability to move my resources to where I think the need is. So I've set up a team, a district priority team. And that team, at the moment, looks at burglaries and robberies. So it's a team of 1 and 4, so it's not a big team, but what we'll do then is draw people from other areas of the district when the need arises. And I've got lots of stats that I can show you, and it was interesting, the data that you provided. That district tasking team go out, and it can be sneaky beaky, it can be in plain cars. We've done some work with Cheshire recently, and they will go out and they will target visiting known burglars on our area or not, or they'll go out and they'll patrol those areas. I think one of the challenges that, and I have to be honest with you, one of the challenges for your perception is that sometimes we don't know what we're doing. So we can't always tell you when we're out there doing undercover stuff. And this is often the best way to catch these people. So if you imagine that you've got visible cops, which you want, but we also deploy a number of officers in plain clothes, in high performance vehicles, and certainly when I cover the whole of GMP on nights, I will always ask for the tactical vehicle crime unit, and they go around in high performance BMWs, Audis, because then they have the capacity to pursue these criminals. Not all officers in Greater Manchester have the appropriate levels of driving skill because it's dangerous. So we have an enhanced unit that will go out and do the tactical vehicle stuff. At this moment in time, and I'm not going to steal John's thunder because I'm known for that, and John's done loads of good work recently, and I want him to celebrate and explain to you what's been going on recently. But there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. I have a team of analysts and researchers who research all my issues, and then, which helps inform where I put those levels of resources. So I want you to be assured that burglary is absolutely a priority, and we've just reinvigorated the district tasking team to have more detectives in that, so that we can do more investigative work and make sure that our files are great to go to the CPS, and that we don't just catch people. And you're absolutely right, it's not about catching them. That's the sexy stuff, that's the stuff that makes TV. But it's actually putting the file together, gathering the evidence, making sure there's no wriggle room for these criminals, because a lot of them have got good lawyers, and they can afford good lawyers. So what I've done now is loaded that district priority team to have more of an investigative capacity within it. I've also asked that we do some work with our colleagues in Cheshire, because again, the problems that have been faced here are the same in Alderley, in Prestbury, in Wilmslow, and I think there's greater effect. We know our numbers are stretched, but if criminals don't see boundaries, criminals don't see, oh, that's South Manchester, that's Wythenshawe, they will just go on a rampage wherever. So I think, for me, one of our moves forward is to work with our colleagues in Cheshire and South Manchester. And because I've got quite a few good contacts in South Manchester, to get my staff from Trafford doing joint patrols on nights with staff from Wythenshawe. So a burglary happens, and we do what's called a trigger plan. So if a burglary happens, we have a list of the top 10 burglars, and we will go and visit their houses. If they're in, we'll ask to see them. If they've got conditions, bail conditions, we'll check the bail conditions. They're not always actionable, but what we can do is we can make a note of what they're wearing. We don't have the powers to go in and search the houses at that point. But I think it's, again, really important that if any of you've got any questions and I've explained to you what we do, or some of the challenges around the investigative work. So, somebody mentioned number plates. It won't surprise most of you to realise that cars have number plates that are either false, they're stolen number plates, they relate to a cloned number plate. So generally people who want to burgle don't use a number plate that's their own. And that's the challenge that we have. If we have an investigative opportunity, we will follow that to the nth degree to make sure. So it might seem that, oh, the police have the number plate, they've not done anything with it. Well, we've tried, but it's come back to an address in Hale, and they've looked at a car of a similar nature and put the same number plate of a house that's on the drive. So again, it's important I try and articulate some of the frustrations that we have. But I just wanted to reassure you that we are doing lots, but it's important that we capture that intelligence as well. Little snippets of information, little things that might not mean much to you yourselves, it all forms part of the greater picture. And if you're phoning in, again, that's evidence to the police authority, to those people who assign Trafford a number of resources. And I'm always on the bandwagon trying to get Trafford more resources. There's only so much I can do. But we are getting more new officers, we're having increased recruits. But again, that takes time to recruit them, to vet them. Some people don't pass the vetting, to train them, 2-3 years, and actually to retain them. We're finding now that increasingly, police don't, when I joined the police, I watched Prime Suspect and I wanted to be Alan Mirren. Yeah. It's a vocation, because, exactly, and policing for me is a vocation, which is why I'm sat here today on my day off, and I'm working every weekend for the next 6 weeks. I care, and I want to serve the community. People who come into the police now, it's not a vocation, it's a job, and the way that policing has changed dramatically. So we have people in for a few years, and then they leave. So we've trained them, we've invested lots of time and money in them. I'm looking at Councillor Freeman over there. He'll understand this, having been a former police officer, that when you joined as well, we joined because we had a passion for the people that we serve. We're finding now that people join us for a couple of years and then use it as a springboard to other opportunities. And that's really frustrating when you've invested as an organisation in them. So they're the kind of things that matter to me. Something that I think was really powerful, and what I'd ask of you is, if we could possibly use a victim and have one of yourselves, and I say video, I mean a clip, I'd like to have some kind of media facility so that when my student officers are learning about burglary, or all my staff for that matter, I'd like them to understand your story and your journey, and I think that's so powerful, because we do become process driven, and if you're a police officer that's been to the 15th burglary that night, but they've got to see that there's a person behind that burglary, there's a person who matters, there's a family. And we had a dreadful, dreadful burglary in Dunham Massey a couple of weeks ago, and I've got 2 kids that are 9 and 13, and it made me cry, and I'm quite a hardened 20-odd year cop. And the way that that statement was taken about the little boy's tears when his parents and him were bundled into a cupboard, you know, absolutely dreadful. I would like to capture some of these views of yourself to show to my officers to say, this is the human cost, this is the effect, this is how it makes these communities feel, and this is what I want my officers to understand and get that human side. So I think that will be something that I'd like to progress with the group. Just to one side, with the burglary stuff, I know knife crimes we mentioned, and I'll finish in a second. We've now assigned police officers and PCSOs to every school in Trafford. And I've got my police officers linked in with the school nurses, because for me we should be having conversations between school nurses and police officers. And if a school has an issue with a pupil, they now know who to ring on that team, on the neighbourhood team. So we split Trafford into 4, and there are generally PCSOs assigned to primary schools, but we've also got police officers assigned to secondary schools, which can be more challenging, and the behaviours are a bit more challenging. So in terms of knife crime, there should be that synergy between the police and the school. And I've said, and I've spoken to 2 head teacher forums recently about the need to ring us and tell us about any incidents. We've got knife archers. What I'd really like to do is get knife archers in all the schools. Unfortunately, schools are a business now, aren't they? And historically, schools haven't wanted knife archers because they don't want their school to be seen as the school with a problem. And we're not saying that that particular school's got a problem. What we're saying is we're all committed to tackling knife crime. And if all the schools in Trafford stood up and said, yes, we'll have a knife arch, then we can do different days at different schools. And then the young people won't know what day we're coming in. And that, for me, that's an opportunity to tackle knife crime. But that synergy between your local cop, your local member of your policing team, and also that we start having the conversation about schools-based police officers. Something we had a few years ago, that went with the cuts. I know the Chief Constable's looking at that again, and I think personally, as someone whose career has been rooted in community policing, again, if we start with the children, we're not going to go far wrong. Yeah. Just my final pledge to you all, I am fiercely proud of what my team deliver. And if any of you want to come out with us, you might have to get up quite early in the mornings. But I throw open that invite if anybody's interested in coming out on raids, watching us do some warrants, getting involved. You won't be put at risk, you'll be kept in a police van. But I'd like you to see what we do with our information and intelligence and how that translates to putting doors in, recovering property, and bringing offenders to the point at which we hand them to the CPS for a conviction, hopefully. So that's enough from me. John's got far more impressive stats and things he wants to talk about. But I just wanted to reassure you that as your district superintendent, I am absolutely committed and will do whatever I can for the community. And we can talk about stats and articulate stats all day long. If you don't feel safe in your community, then we, us, the collective us, and the police, local elected members, the council, we all need, as a team, to work together to